There is one thing that I want to state, that indeed economic diplomacy is very critical to us. The United States is perhaps now our largest market when it comes to the export of apparel. We are close to, I think we are the largest exporter to them, and the market continues to grow. So we take our relationship with the United States very, very seriously in this context as a key and fundamental trading partner. And that is why you will find that during the recent state visit by the President, certain key issues were undertaken of enhancing the trade and partnership between us and the United States. As I've said, we are also negotiating the Strategic Trade and Investment Partnership Agreement, and there are other programs that the Kenya government is working very, very closely with the United States, which have a major bearing on the economies of both countries, but more so on the Kenyan economy. Mr. Speaker, there's one issue that I may need to get a little more clarification, but that was the issue of the dual citizenship and the Maisha card. If the Speaker allows, we can do a little more research on this specific item and communicate to the House. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Yes, Senator Muma.
My question on policy, the policy on the ratio between diplomats, politically appointed diplomats and career diplomats.
I did respond to it. I said that we may not have a firm figure, but for instance, I could give you what I think. For instance, a proportion of about 70% for the career diplomats and 30% for the infusion would be a fairly decent arrangement. But as I said, we are giving a more thought out process that will appear in the sessional paper, which we shall bring to Parliament for discussion. Thank you.
Senator, yes, Senator Mudama.
Yes.
Your question has not been responded to adequately.
It has been responded, but Mr. Speaker, I just want to ask the CS if he can listen to me. Mr. CS, if you can listen. Mr. Speaker, I just wanted to request
Senator Kavindu, you know, understanding order.
He was talking and you are not seeing, Mr. Speaker.
Senator Kavindu, just have your seat. Please take your seat. Please. Just take your seat. You see, under standing orders, and more particularly standing order 51(7)C, 51(C)(7)C, states that the senator who has the primary question has a chance to ask 2 supplementary questions. Any other senator can only ask 1 supplementary question, which we do not have the provisions on standing order. All right, proceed. If you need clarification, that's quite okay.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I just wanted to tell Mr. CS that, Honorable CS, that these people have been waiting for their compensation for the last 26 good years. Many of them are dying. So as much as we are in good relationship with the Americans and we don't want to offend them, but let's follow up for the compensation of our people, please. They are dying in poverty. They are perishing in poverty. And even as a country, as Kenyans, we've not been able to assist them with anything, even medical assistance. Thank you.
Senator Jeriot.
Mr. Speaker, I want to thank the Prime CS for finding time to respond to these questions, and it's not just in this house. I must appreciate him for his diligence, even outside this house, how he responds to issues raised by Kenyans. Mr. Speaker, my question is to piggyback on what Senator Sifuna had initially asked. Availability of government services, actually, to our citizens in the diaspora. I know, Mr. Speaker, that through eCitizen, Kenyans are now able to access thousands of government services online, and they're able to pay for the same and quickly receive solutions to their problems. The challenge with our diaspora citizens is that these services are either not available or are help desk to help them maybe respond to the issues such as what Senator Sifuna was speaking about, ID applications, renewal of passports, and the same. Yet, these are services that I want to believe, if his ministry, alongside the other state department that is in charge of citizen services, like eCitizen, Mr. Speaker, were to set up a help desk across our consulars, Mr. Speaker, then citizens will be saved from the trouble of having to travel thousands of kilometers sometimes, wasting money and time to access certain critical government services. So the question in brief, Mr. Speaker, is when are they going to make eCitizen services easily accessible and the issues that citizens have easily resolvable, Mr. Speaker, so that they don't struggle? I thank you.
Senator Eddy.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I want to thank the CS, the Prime CS, for being in the House today to answer these questions. I also wanted to piggyback on Senator Sifuna's questions on the efficiency of staffing, and particularly narrow it down to legal services. Looking at the United States, Mr. Speaker, having studied there and lived there for over 8 years, and having ties to the United States, Mr. Speaker, with the diaspora, the Kenyan in the diaspora, Mr. Speaker, there is a lot of challenges for our people there with regards to legal representations. Mr. Speaker, as you know, in the United States as well as other countries where our people are found, there are a number of people who get arrested, whether genuinely or for reasons otherwise. And after those arrests, some of them end up being incarcerated to the extent that their families cannot be able to access them. They don't have legal services. Mr. Speaker, a case in example is a former prominent presidential candidate, Mohamed Abdubadida, who was incarcerated, and for months, almost 2 years, even our government did not know that he was under bars. He was behind bars, Mr. Speaker. And I just wonder whether there is proper legal services across the 52 states, because I know that in DC is where we have got 1 or 2 legal representations, but what is the ministry doing to make sure that our people in the United States have got representation across the United States? And is this also extended as services to other countries where we are seeing problems like war in Lebanon, where legal representation is a problem, as well as evacuation of our people in Lebanon? Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Senator Miraj.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. My question to the CS is concerning our sisters who are on the run in Saudi Arabia, whom, after following up with your ministry, I was updated that the Department for Diaspora had conducted some DNA tests because the sisters of ours had kids in the foreign country. And there's been a problem of them being deported with their kids back to Kenya. So my question is, for how long are our sisters to wait for this? Because they are not able to access the rescue centers in Saudi. So they are living on the run with small kids who are exposed to so many cruelty to the women who are left to take care of them. So my question is, Mr. CS, for how long do our sisters have to survive on the run while the matter is already in the attention of the ministry, and they are supposed to have been paying some legal fees for them to have the ownership of their kids? So my question is, for how long will our sisters be exposed in the Saudi Arabia before the government can take the necessary actions to bring them back with their kids to their nation? Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Senator Onyonka Richard.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. First of all, I would like to say that I'm happy to see the Cabinet Secretary, who is somebody I've worked with before and somebody I know very well. And Mr. Speaker, I would like to say that I am giving my appreciation of the fact that when about 2 weeks ago, we had an incident in Mali, and I called somebody in your ministry and told them that there are Kenyans who are in trouble, and I was surprised, pleasantly surprised, that the government was able to engage that team overnight, and the following morning, in fact, the Kenyans who are in trouble responded back and said, we are safe, and thank you for intervening, and they thanked the officer in the ministry. I forget her name, and she did an excellent job. Mr. Speaker, the question I'm actually asking the CS is that when you look at what is happening in Lebanon, I've not seen the Kenyan government come up either explaining to the public what you intend to do with Kenyans who have been working there. There are cases of Kenyans who are calling us back. Do you have any plans to airlift those Kenyans in case the war continues? And is there a possibility that you can actually set up a fund from now on? Because most of the money that members of the Kenyan community are giving us in form of contributions or diaspora transfers is a lot of money. So I would like the minister to tell us whether there's a possibility they can set up a fund, and if possible, if it works well, so that anytime we have an emergency and anytime there are cases where Kenyans who are working outside Kenya and they're in trouble, whether there's a possibility that we can always airlift our people back and make sure that every Kenyans are safe, because the world is becoming a bit volatile. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Senator from Nandi, Senator Chiranke.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mine is on the issue of, you see, Mr. Speaker, the money that came to this country through foreign exchange earner was 15,966 million in February 2024, according to the Central Bank of the Republic of Kenya. My question, Mr. Speaker, because this is the highest foreign exchange earner to the Republic, is about labor attaches. Mr. Speaker, you are aware the CS of labor was in this house a few months ago. My concern is, what is the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and through the Prime Cabinet Secretary on the issue of labor attaches to ensure our young men and women, because the President has just signed what we call labor, there was the labor migration bill, and the President has signed for more people or young people to be taken. And Mr. Speaker, even on the issue of legal services, Mr. Speaker, you are aware we only have one legal advisor in New York. I remember there was a frustrated person from Kapsabet a few months ago, and I shared with the PS of Foreign Affairs. My concern, Mr. Speaker, what is the role of the Department of Diaspora Affairs in terms of handling such matters? Because I remember when I shared with the PS of Foreign Affairs, Mr. Speaker, the intervention took long. But my concern, it should be the Office of the Diaspora of Foreign Affairs through the PS, who is my very good neighbor. And he normally comes to Nandi occasionally, and he has even relatives. What can he do, Mr. Speaker, on these two matters that I've raised? I thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Senator Olekena.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, let me begin by appreciating the Prime Cabinet Secretary
these proceedings, Mr. Speaker, are live. And while seated here, I've just received a question from a Kenyan who live in the United States and another one who live in the UK. And their concern is one. The concern has got to do with a fiduciary responsibility of our embassies across the country. In the UK, the query is very simple. And Mr. Speaker, you'll allow me to refer to my message which has just been sent to me. And this relates to the address number 45 Portland Place, London, United Kingdom. And then the sort code is W1A 4GA. And the concern here is a very basic concern. It has to do with filing of annual returns for Government of Kenya. These are returns which are required for every embassy across. The United Kingdom requires this. So my question to the Prime Cabinet Secretary is that, are you aware that filing of annual returns by the Government of Kenya has not been consistent, specifically for the High Commission Office in the United Kingdom? And if so, what can be done to be able to ensure that we have a check system that will guarantee that we are compliant in those countries? Number two also has to do with our embassies abroad. Do we have any embassies that we own? And I ask this because of the issue of Uganda. Uganda, across the world, Idi Amin did something very, very honorable. He bought buildings for in every country. In New York, it's actually a walking distance to the United Nations headquarters. So I just wanted to confirm whether we have some that we own, and also whether we are compliant in filing our returns, and if we are renting, if we are compliant in paying our rent. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Senator Manzadani.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, while I ask a question in relation to Senator Sifuna's matter, I want to give the Cabinet Secretary good news from his office that recently a Catholic sister from my village who is working in Argentina sought help for good conduct so that she could be processed. And I just advised her on phone to get in touch with the ministry online. And Mr. Speaker, I want to surprise the Cabinet Secretary. Within 2 days, she had, everything had been processed and she was able to be employed in Argentina. And that shows that somebody somewhere, and this was the legal department, is doing something good in your ministry. But at the same time, Mr. Speaker, is there a policy in the event a Kenyan dies abroad? A lot of times, and especially those countries which do not keep bodies for long, especially countries which do cremation, and especially Islamic countries where funeral is conducted in a day. When a Kenyan passes away abroad, it becomes such a challenge, Mr. Speaker, so that by the time you get the body home, it has almost become the responsibility of member of parliament or senator. Is there a policy, and so that there is a desk where Kenyans can report, and because of our culture, our own people who are deceased could be taken care of with urgency, and the families could be settled during bereavement? I thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Prime CS, you may now proceed to respond.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I must say that as we talk, there are what you might call emerging issues as well in this conversation. But let me start by saying that I think, and I believe what Honorable